Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Speak Storytime channel. On this channel, I provide lots of tips, tricks, stories, and interesting English podcasts that can help improve your listening and speaking skills in English. Today, we're starting something special for our beginner English learners. Before we begin, I would like to remind you that I am sharing this material with you for free. I hope you can support me by liking and commenting after watching this video for about 3 minutes. Your feedback is important to me and helps me improve. Thank you for your support and comments. Great, let's begin.
First steps in English, listening and speaking skills. Welcome to our Easy English Learning podcast, where we dive into the basics of listening and speaking in English. I'm Jane, and today I'm joined by Mr. Han, an expert in teaching English to beginners. Hello, Mr. Han.
Hello, Jane. And hello to all our listeners. It's a pleasure to be here to help everyone take their first steps in English.
Mr. Han, many of our listeners are just starting their journey in English. Why is listening so important for beginners?
Great question, Jane. Listening is the foundation of learning any language. It's how we naturally learn our first language as children. By listening, you immerse yourself in the rhythm, the sounds, and the patterns of English. This helps you understand how words are used in context and improves your pronunciation.
That makes sense. What are some effective ways for beginners to practice listening in English?
There are several fun and engaging methods. First, listen to simple English conversations. Podcasts like ours, aimed at beginners, are perfect. You can also watch English cartoons or TV shows designed for children. They use simple language and are easier to understand. Another great way is to listen to English songs and try to follow along with the lyrics.
All sound like enjoyable activities. Now, let's talk about speaking. How can our listeners improve their speaking skills?
Speaking starts with building confidence. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. They're a part of learning. Start by practicing simple phrases and sentences out loud. Repeat after speakers in podcasts or videos. Another effective method is to use language learning apps that listen and give feedback on your pronunciation.
Speaking of practicing, could you give our listeners a simple exercise they can do right after this podcast to practice both listening and speaking?
Absolutely. Find a short, simple English story or article. Listen to it once without trying to understand every word. Focus on getting the gist of it. Then listen again, pausing after each sentence or phrase. Repeat the sentence or phrase out loud, mimicking the speaker's pronunciation as closely as possible. This exercises both your listening and speaking muscles.
That sounds like a fantastic exercise. Mr. Han, any final tips for our listeners to keep motivated while learning English?
Yes, Jane. Learning a new language is a marathon, not a sprint. Set small, achievable goals for yourself. Celebrate your progress, no matter how small. And remember, the key to learning is consistency. Practice a little bit every day, and over time, you'll see significant improvement.
Mr. Han, could you recommend some common phrases or expressions beginners should start practicing?
Of course, Jane. For beginners, it's useful to start with greetings and everyday expressions. Phrases like, "Hello, how are you?" "I'm fine, thank you," and "nice to meet you" are essential. Also, practice questions and responses for basic personal information, such as, "What's your name?" and "My name is."
Great advice. And how about understanding replies? It can be challenging at first.
That's true. Listening for key words in replies can help. For example, in the question, "How are you?" listen for positive words like good, great, or fine. Even if you don't understand the whole sentence, these words can give you a clue about the response. Over time, your understanding will deepen.
Understanding context seems crucial. And when speaking, how important is pronunciation at this early stage?
Pronunciation is important, but it's also important not to be overly concerned about it at the beginning. Focus on being understood rather than perfect pronunciation. Over time, as you listen more and practice speaking, your pronunciation will naturally improve.
That's reassuring to hear. For our listeners who might be shy or nervous about speaking, what encouragement can you offer?
Remember, every speaker of English, even native speakers, started with learning. Making mistakes is a natural part of the learning process. Don't let fear of mistakes stop you from speaking. Each mistake is a step towards improvement. Also, consider finding a speaking partner who is also learning. You can support and encourage each other.
That's a wonderful suggestion. Finding a community or a partner can really boost confidence and motivation. Mr. Han, before we wrap up, any parting words for our listeners?
Keep immersing yourself in the language. Surround yourself with English through music, podcasts, TV shows, and even labels around your home. Be patient and persistent. Your efforts will pay off, and one day, you'll look back and be amazed at how far you've come.
How can they effectively do that while focusing on their listening and speaking skills?
That's a fantastic question, Jane. Expanding your vocabulary can seem daunting, but it's quite manageable with the right strategies. One effective method is through themed vocabulary lists. For example, start with a theme like food and learn words related to that theme. Then listen to podcasts or watch videos on cooking or dining out in English. This approach helps contextualize new words, making them easier to remember and use.
Themed lists sound like a great idea, and for speaking,
when it comes to speaking, try to use the new words in sentences as soon as possible. You could describe what you had for lunch using the new vocabulary, or talk about your favorite foods. Another tip is to keep a vocabulary journal. Write down new words, their meanings, and example sentences. Reviewing and practicing these regularly will greatly improve both vocabulary and speaking skills.
Keeping a journal is a timeless tip. Now, in terms of listening, how can beginners challenge themselves as they improve?
As beginners become more comfortable, it's important to gradually increase the difficulty of the listening material. Start incorporating more advanced podcasts or watch news segments and movies in English. At first, use subtitles to help with understanding, but try to rely on them less over time. Challenging yourself this way helps improve listening comprehension and introduces more complex vocabulary and grammar structures naturally.
Progressing to more challenging material is crucial indeed. Mr. Han, technology plays a big role in language learning today. Any specific tech tools or apps that you recommend?
Absolutely, Jane. Language learning apps can be very helpful, especially those that focus on listening and speaking. Look for apps that offer interactive dialogues, pronunciation practice, and listening comprehension exercises. Additionally, using speech recognition technology can help refine pronunciation by providing immediate feedback. Many apps also include social features, allowing learners to connect with native speakers and language learners worldwide for practice and exchange.
The social aspect of learning is so important. It seems technology can really enhance the learning experience. Before we conclude, any final piece of advice for our listeners who might be feeling a bit overwhelmed?
Learning a new language is a journey with ups and downs. If you're feeling overwhelmed, take a step back and focus on why you started learning English in the first place. Set small, daily goals instead of only looking at the big picture. Celebrate your successes, no matter how minor they may seem. Remember, consistency over time is key. You're not alone in this journey, and every bit of progress is a step forward in your language learning adventure.
Wise words to remember. Thank you, Mr. Han, for all the insights and practical advice. And thanks to our listeners for tuning in. Keep practicing, stay positive, and remember that every step forward is a step towards achieving your goals.